It is Monday, June 4th, and this is Fox and Friends First, happening right now at 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. A Fox News alert for you. The Grand Canyon State gripped with fear as the manhunt for a possible serial killer ramps up. A common thread linking at least 3 of the 4 victims, including a doctor, tied to the JonBenet Ramsey case. And police fear the shooter could strike again at any moment. Haunting, I should say, images as rivers of red-hot lava spew from Guatemala's Fuego volcano, killing at least 25 people overnight. The race now to save those who could not escape in time. And the high school graduate who got much more than his diploma. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
I'm on top of the world, I'm on top of the world, Been waiting on this for a while now, paying my dues to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, been holding it in for a while, Take you with me.
Good morning. Hopefully you will wake up feeling on top of the world, wherever in the world you're waking up this morning. A live shot of New York City. A little rain falling across the area here. Thank you so much for joining us at the beginning of a brand new week. I'm Heather Childers. Let's get straight to our top story. Secretary of Defense James Mattis is where we begin. Back in town after talking North Korea denuclearization with world leaders. Mattis making his own trip to Singapore ahead of the June 12th summit as Syria looks to get involved. Garrett Tenney joins us now live from Washington, D.C. with the latest. Good morning, Garrett.
Heather, good morning to you. Secretary Mattis has always been one to call it how he sees it. And at a security conference in Singapore this weekend, Mattis warned his counterparts from across the globe that negotiations with North Korea will be a bumpy road. At a meeting with defense officials from South Korea and Japan, Mattis said the U.S. and its allies need to keep the pressure on North Korea throughout these negotiations in order for them to be successful.
We must remain vigilant, and we will continue to implement all UN Security Council resolutions on North Korea. North Korea will receive relief only when it demonstrates verifiable and irreversible steps to denuclearization.
In 9 days ahead of this summit, the White House continues to tamp down expectations ahead of it as well, suggesting this summit will not be a one-time deal, but instead is the beginning of a much longer negotiation between the U.S. and North Korea.
These negotiations take time. Everything's on the table during the negotiations, but you can't expect you're not going to change Rome in a day. And I think that's a very realistic attitude. Everybody says you can't do it, we can't do it. President says, hang on a second, we may be able to do it.
Now, President Trump isn't the only world leader preparing to meet with Kim Jong-un for the first time. North Korean media is reporting Syrian President Bashar al-Assad now plans to visit North Korea to meet its leader. No date has been set, but with the U.S. summit coming up, that meeting is notable because those two countries, Syria and North Korea, have been accused of cooperating on chemical weapons together. Heather?
Yes, they have. Very notable, to say the least. Thank you so much for joining us, Garrett. We appreciate it. Well, the world's #1 state sponsor of terror is accusing President Trump of bullying. Iran's foreign minister now begging U.S. allies to stand up to the White House and save the Obama-era nuclear deal. Iran says that the U.S.'s decision to pull out of the deal was illegal and challenges international law. President Trump has since reimposed harsh economic sanctions against Iran. At least 25 people are dead, hundreds more injured after a volcano violently erupts in Guatemala. Now, the volcano of fire spewing lava and thick black smoke covering entire villages in ash. Troops from as far away as Colombia coming to help search for the survivors. This is the volcano's second eruption this year. Here at home, in the meantime, nearly a dozen people trapped in their homes on Hawaii's Big Island by lava. 3 people cut off from water and electricity, airlifted to safety. Right now, lava is covering 3,500 acres of land there. And now to this Fox News alert for you. Police desperate to find a possible serial killer after 4 murders are committed in an Arizona neighborhood. One victim, a psychiatrist, worked at one of America's most infamous unsolved mysteries, I should say. Todd Pyro is here with the very latest on this. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning to you, Heather. A community on edge this morning as police work around the clock to stop a possible serial killer. Let's take a look at the timeline of the killings. On Thursday, forensic psychiatrist Stephen Pitt shot outside his office. Witnesses saying they heard an argument followed by gunshots. Pitt had worked on high-profile investigations, including the killing of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, the beauty pageant star found dead at her family's home. Then on Friday, 2 paralegals, Valeria Sharp and Laura Anderson, shot and killed in a Scottsdale law firm. Police confirming that all of these slayings are related, releasing this sketch of the suspect. Then on Saturday, psychologist and counselor Marshall Levine shot in his Scottsdale office. Police have not yet confirmed a link to this killing.
Sad that this happened to him. He was really sweet and easygoing and friendly and reliable. He just seemed like a very caring person.
We're asking the public to remain vigilant, and any tips or other information that might be out of the ordinary to please call 911 so we can get that information and get working on those tips.
Multiple rewards are being offered as authorities try and catch this killer. But if you look at even the 4th one, which hasn't been officially linked yet, there's something that is suspiciously linking those. Basically, it's the psych element of it, both psychiatrists, psychologists.
Well, let's hope there's not a 5th.
Let's hope, and hope they get this person ASAP.
All right. Thank you very much, Todd. Appreciate it. Well, a manhunt expanding for these 4 inmates who broke out of jail. The men facing domestic abuse, drugs, and weapons charges while they're supposed to be locked up in Louisiana. Police are urging people in the area to lock their doors while several departments look for them. It's still unclear how they escaped. And a woman who drove onto a youth baseball field, killing 1 person, is expected in court today. The terrifying moments caught on camera. Carol Sherrow accused of ramming her car through a gate before speeding across a Maine Little League field. Well, 68-year-old Douglas Parkhurst died a hero, pushing children out of the way before he was eventually hit. Sherrow, who has 2 prior drunk driving convictions, is charged with manslaughter. And a woman is behind bars after sparking chaos near the finish line of the San Diego Marathon. Thousands of runners rerouted as officers chased the suspect of a hit and run to the top of a nearby parking garage. That is where witnesses say they heard gunshots. Officers say that she pointed a gun at them before throwing it down into the street. The gun was apparently an airsoft gun. One officer was hurt when his gun accidentally discharged. He is expected to be okay, though. And FBI agents in the Clinton email probe, they have some more time to prepare for a hearing on the Hill. A watchdog report will not be released until at least next week, which pushes back the hearing with Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz. His investigation looks into the FBI and Justice Department's handling of the Clinton probe during the 2016 presidential election. Now, that report was originally expected out in May. And President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is leaving the door open for a sit-down between the president and special counsel Robert Mueller. But he says that it will only happen if it brings the, quote, horrible nightmare of an investigation to an end.
I don't know that, and probably we're not going to know that until he concludes. I got a feeling he did. I have a feeling that collusion has come up completely empty. That's why I want to see the reports on Spygate, because I believe that came up empty. It doesn't mean that completely. It means that, you know, there's got to be a high bar they have to reach in terms of convincing us that they're fair, convincing us that we're going to get the things we need. I want to see the Spygate report. Jay and I want to keep an open mind, and I have to just be honest, I mean, with a leaning toward not. But look, if they can convince us that it will be brief, it'll be to the point, there are 5 or 6 points they have to clarify, and with that, we can get this over, this long nightmare for the American public over. Second, I do think that it's still an open question, but it's beginning to get resolved in favor of not doing it unless they start coming across with things that we're asking for.
Well, the Mueller investigation has so far cost the American taxpayers almost $17 million. And a record-setting performance gives Golden State a commanding lead in the NBA Finals. Did you see this?
Curry back in the corner. Nice little fake. Sets up another. Got it again. Steph Curry back-to-back threes.
Again and again, Steph Curry connecting on an NBA Finals record 9 three-pointers, his 33 points leading to a 122-103 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now the Warriors, that means they lead the best-of-7 series 2-0. So a Davidson grad there, doing a good job. Well, Fox News alert for you. Antifa is back with a vengeance. The disturbing new video as violent vigilantes launch bloody attacks on a prayer rally.
The fact that the president has moved forward with these tariffs is not just going to hurt Canadian jobs, it's going to hurt U.S. jobs as well.
And fighting for fair trade, the Trump administration firing back at threats of tariff retaliation. But are American workers really at risk? Why our next guest says quite the opposite, actually. And former President Obama's message to America, you just weren't ready for me. Really?
In the middle of the night, in my dreams, you should see the things we do.
Well, the Trump administration is ramping up the fight for fair trade following the latest round of steel and aluminum tariffs placed on Canada, Mexico, and the EU. But even as our allies threaten to retaliate, the administration isn't backing down.
We have the right to do that in the interest of national security. They need to look in the mirror at their own unfair trade practices. At the end of the day, this is a trade dispute, and the president is going to defend this country. He stands for American workers, and he's standing up for them now.
Well, joining me now to react is economist Peter Morici. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
So where do you stand on the trade policies? Our allies, they are not happy about it. They're threatening to retaliate against us. President Trump over the weekend spent time defending the trade moves that he wants to make. What do you think?
Well, I think our allies have been disingenuous. You know, Germany's market is closed not only to our exports, but also to Italian exports, and it's using this crisis to consolidate its power and basically continue its mercantilist policies. The Europeans have said over and over again, let's sit down and talk about this. But when we sit down and talk about it, nothing ever happens. Now, this is a crude instrument, these tariffs against allies. There might have been gentler ways to do it, and I've suggested them. However, they are justified if these are the instruments the president chooses to take.
When you read what President Trump had to say over the weekend, some of his tweets that went out on this, and we can show people, I mean, it makes sense. The first tweet, one of them that we have for you, says, when you're almost $800 billion a year down on trade, you can't lose a trade war. The U.S. has been ripped off by other countries for years on trade, time to get smart. And then the second one says the United States must, at long last, be treated fairly on trade. If we charge a country $0 to sell their goods, and they charge us 25, 50, or even 100% to sell ours, it is unfair and can no longer be tolerated. That is not free trade or fair trade. It is stupid trade. So, well, I mean, you read that. Makes sense? Is it true?
Well, I've been arguing that for years, and Peter Navarro and I have worked together on these issues over the years. My feeling is that China, Germany, Korea, Japan, that's where the real problem is. And that's where our focus should be. Unfortunately, with regard to Germany, we can't deal with the Germans unless we deal with the EU. And then they always fall back on excuses. Well, our decision-making processes prohibit us from doing anything about it. We've had talks and talks and talks and talks with them about steel over 2 or 3 decades, and nothing ever happens because the big problem there really is China. China is producing record amounts of steel that are subsidized. They go into European markets, depress prices, and then their steel comes here. And they never want to do anything about it. You know, the Europeans love diplomacy, and the answer to failed diplomacy always seems to be more diplomacy.
Right.
What this thing does is shake things up.
Well, you can't try the same thing over and over and over again. There's a saying about that, what that
Insanity.
makes you. Yeah, something like that. Well, something that is very good, the U.S. job growth. It has surged as unemployment plummets in May. So I want to ask you why these numbers are so important to the average American, but bad news for Democrats. Let's take a look at the numbers that we're talking about specifically. 223,000 U.S. jobs added in May, much more than expected. 3.9% national unemployment rate. That's an 18-year low, and then black unemployment 5.9%. That is an all-time low. So why are these bad numbers for Democrats? I mean, there would be the given that, you know, it doesn't do good for the midterms coming up.
Well, at the risk of mentioning another media outlet, the high priest of Democratic economics, Paul Krugman, proclaimed with the election of Donald Trump the next day, when an ignorant and irresponsible man is elected president, you know, the apocalypse is before us. Well, guess what? The apocalypse hasn't happened because he's not an ignorant and irresponsible man. Rather, his economic policies, you can, you know, ask some questions about whether the tariff is the appropriate instrument and all that. But overall, his economic policies are working. And I'd like to point out something from the jobs report, which is very critical. These tariffs have been in place now, have been in focus now for 2 months. And we've heard over and over again, people like the chamber saying it's going to be, you know, the apocalypse when it comes to jobs. If you look at metal-using industries, the industries that buy steel and aluminum, their jobs growth is up. They're doing very, very well. So if this is bad for America and it's bad for those industries, why does the data say otherwise? What this job report reveals is just how vacuous and lying the Obama administration was, and how vacuous and lying all these folks are that are critical of the basic focus of Donald Trump's policies, which are to free up free enterprise by lowering taxes and deregulating and getting Americans a fair deal on trade. The pillars are sound.
Vacuous. That is going to be the word of the day,
Vacuous.
Everybody at home. Okay, use it at least once.
Professors do that.
Use it at least once. Thank you so much. We appreciate it, Peter.
Take care.
Great job. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour. And tit for tat, the Oklahoma governor firing back after landing on California's state travel blacklist, her epic response that you have to hear. And a GOP governor candidate triggering liberals by riding a patriotic Jeep loaded with a fake machine gun. But Chris Kobach refuses to apologize for supporting our Second Amendment. Carly Shimkus up next with the reaction flooding social media. Good morning. Well, a candidate for governor sparking outrage at a parade over the weekend. Chris Kobach riding in his American flag-colored Jeep with a large replica gun mounted on top. And Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with how the Kansas Secretary of State is firing back. So this looked fun.
Yeah, that's right. It looked fun, but a lot of people were pretty scared about that, and we'll get to that reaction a little later. He has sparked a significant amount of outrage for, like you said, Heather, riding down a parade route in a red, white, and blue painted Jeep with a replica gun mounted on the back. Now, after that parade, he tweeted about it, saying, "Had a blast riding in the old Shawnee Day Parade in this souped-up Jeep with a replica gun. Those who want to restrict the right to keep and bear arms are deeply misguided. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun." But like we said, some parade goers criticized him on social media, saying the display scared their children, so much so that the city of Shawnee even apologized. Now, after all of that happened, he followed up with this tweet saying the outrage over the replica gun on the back of a patriotic Jeep is the left trying to attack guns and your Second Amendment rights. I will not back down in the face of a snowflake meltdown and outrage culture. So this whole situation sparking some mixed reaction on social media. Ben says it would have been one thing if that was an old military Jeep that came with that gun, but riding in this Jeep was inappropriate and in poor taste. But Keith tweets, "What's the problem with this picture?" So he doesn't see the big deal. Neither does Steve, who tweets, "Celebrating the Second Amendment and uniquely American freedoms should never require an apology." So that's how this whole thing is shaping up on social media.
Now, he wasn't standing behind the gun, mimicking using it or anything
like that. You know, that's actually
right?
a good point. I guess if you see the pictures, he wasn't. So I think people were just scared about the gun. The kids were scared.
I can see both sides of that.
Yeah.
So President Obama, apparently Americans were not ready for him.
Apparently. Well, according to his former advisor, Ben Rhodes, who has a memoir coming out tomorrow, and he said that the former president reacted like this, saying this exact quote on Election Day when President Trump was elected, saying, "Maybe we pushed too far. Maybe people just want to fall back into their tribe. Sometimes I wonder whether I was 10 or 20 years too early." So that quote coming from Ben Rhodes, saying the former president said that. Matt on Twitter says, "We need not worry. He will continue to lecture us via Netflix productions." Stooping to the levels of the masses in order to teach us. L on Twitter also says, "King Obama should have realized that we do not do outdo monarchs in America. That was his real disappointment. So, of course, his critics, I can almost feel the audible sigh when they read this quote.
So Ben Rhodes has a book coming out.
Yeah, that's
that
tomorrow.
explains why I've seen him all over the place lately.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it probably explains this too.
Yeah.
So this is a great story. We always love it when we have military stories involving our parents
These
who are
never
able
get
to come
old.
home.
Yeah, absolutely. A Massachusetts graduation made extra special when a military dad surprised his son during his year-long deployment. Take a look at this. Gosh, that just gives me chills. That is Army Sergeant Damon Solomon surprising his son Tyler, who of course had no idea. Dad says that his son's look on his face made all the planning and all the secret keeping worth it.
That's wonderful. So they gave him special permission for this special leave to be there for his son.
I absolutely love that. Who doesn't?
Thank you so much, Carly.
Thanks a lot,
Appreciate
Heather.
it.
Appreciate it.
Well, the time now is about 26 minutes after the top of the hour, and the stage is set for a subpoena showdown. President Trump's legal team vowing an unprecedented legal battle if Robert Mueller forces him to testify. Our next guest, an attorney calling the special counsel's bluff, why she says it's just a threat to get President Trump to cave.
I address you today not as the chairman of the British Monarchist Society and Foundation, but a friend, a fellow defender of the crown.
And a royal accent faker. This guy fooling millions for years with a charming British accent that turned out to be bogus. Back with the Fox News alert for you. Bloody violence breaking out after Antifa protesters storm a Patriot prayer rally. The demonstration coming to blows in Portland, Oregon, 1 year after the same two groups clashed in the city. Protesters throwing bottles and fireworks at police officers, while some were caught with knives and some other weapons as well. At least 4 people were arrested. Patriot Prayer bills itself as a peaceful First Amendment advocacy group. And a suspected terrorist accused of planning a deadly Christmas attack will face a federal judge today. Everett Aaron Jameson expected to plead guilty to charges of attempting to aid a terrorist organization. The prosecutors say that he wanted to bomb and open fire on a popular tourist attraction in San Francisco in the name of ISIS. He told an undercover FBI agent that he had been there before and he knew that it was a crowded area. Today, the fate of an illegal immigrant convicted of killing a border agent will be decided. Closing arguments will take place in a Texas court on whether Gustavo Sandoval will face life in prison or death row. He was found guilty for the murder of Javier Vega Jr., who was brutally gunned down in front of his family while fishing in 2014. Sandoval's alleged accomplice, Ismael Hernandez Vallejo, is awaiting trial for the same charges. Candidates in 8 states making a final push to voters about to head to the polls. 8 states holding primaries tomorrow, but all eyes will be on California. Democrats hope to flip, I should say, some of those House seats there. The gubernatorial race also heating up. Democratic Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom looking to succeed boss Jerry Brown. On the Republican side, John Cox hopes an endorsement from President Trump puts him on top. The state promotes the 2 top vote getters to the November election, regardless of party. Oklahoma firing back after California's Attorney General banned state-sponsored travel to the state. This after Oklahoma's new so-called LGBT adoption law allows private adoption agencies to deny service to same-sex couples based on religious views. Now, the Oklahoma governor lashing out, saying, quote, "We won't miss a few Californians traveling on state business. The ban likely will not affect a big college football matchup between UCLA and the Oklahoma Sooners this coming season. We will see if it does." Well, today, First Lady Melania Trump will make her first public appearance since undergoing surgery. She's co-hosting a private reception for Gold Star families along with President Trump. The White House also confirming the First Lady will not join the president at the high-stakes meeting with Kim Jong-un in Singapore or the G7 summit. The First Lady's last public appearance was last month when she welcomed back 3 American hostages from North Korea. Well, President Trump's legal team firing back, vowing to take it to court if special counsel Robert Mueller subpoenas the president as part of the Russia probe. Listen.
If you try to subpoena the president, the Giuliani legal team is going to take that to court to say the president cannot be subpoenaed in this particular issue.
Well, the president and his team still willing to sit down for questions with Mueller's team, but they want to first determine the scope of such a meeting. So why are we talking about subpoenas at all? Joining me now is Washington Times legal affairs reporter and attorney Alex Heuer. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's just start with that question. Why are we talking about subpoenas?
Well, the idea here would be to get into the mind of the president. Specifically, we've heard the allegations of obstruction of justice in terms of the firing of James Comey, as well as trying to talk to Attorney General Jeff Sessions about his recusal in the Russia investigation. So it could be that Special Counsel Robert Mueller is trying to find out, was there specific intent to obstruct the Russia investigation, and that would establish his ability to bring charges against the President of the United States.
So the president's lawyers sent this 20-page letter to Robert Mueller, his office, and it was leaked, go figure. But let's take a look at some of the points made in this legal team memo. That POTUS cannot be compelled to testify, cannot obstruct justice, and has authority over federal investigations. Are all those things true?
To be honest, it depends who you ask. It depends what legal expert you talk to. Especially during this time, you find some that are one way or the other in this political heat of 2018. But I think the honest ones that don't have any sort of bias would tell you it depends. We don't really have any Supreme Court precedent specifically laying out in regards to a subpoena and whether a president can be forced to testify. And so that's kind of what would be tested. Now, we do have Supreme Court precedent that does kind of shape the powers of executive privilege, what we saw with President Nixon. And that was in regards to having to abide by an order to hand over the Watergate tapes. So, you know, I think that it depends specifically who you ask, what lawyer would make a certain argument. But it's definitely something that if it was to come to test in the courts, it would take time. And what that would happen is it would then postpone the conclusion of the Mueller investigation, which is not something the President of the United States wants to see happen. He's wanted this wrapped up.
Right. We do not want it postponed. It's been going on for so long. $17 million to the cost of taxpayers at this point so far. Here's what President Trump had to say about this leaked attorney letter. He says that there was no collusion with Russia except by the Democrats. When will this very expensive witch hunt hoax ever end? So bad for our country. Is the special counsel, Justice Department, leaking my lawyers' letters to the fake news media? Should be looking at Dems' corruption instead. I mean, it really is a shame, all of this information that keeps getting leaked that is, you know, hampering our ability to do the job that needs to be done in terms of the economy, in terms of North Korea, Iran. We're talking today about Syria, meeting with North Korea. There's a lot of things on the plate, but yet this continues to take that focus away. And these leaks, what do you think about this letter being leaked?
You're right. It does put especially the president's attorney-client privilege in jeopardy. And that was part of what the letter laid out, was what you were mentioning with what all the president has going on, especially with the summit coming up roughly a week away with North Korea. So there is grounds, I think, a valid argument to be made that any sort of questions being answered in the special counsel's investigation has to come second to his duties as president of the United States right now.
And it's not just Americans watching all this coverage. It's people overseas as well watching it, people that we need to negotiate with and get business moving with. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.
Great insight for us. Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour, and Starbucks still feeling the heat for this racist altercation inside a Philadelphia store. But the head of the coffee empire says that it's President Trump's fault. We're sharing your comments on this one online. And a breast cancer breakthrough. The new research that says patients could skip chemo. And forget merits, liberal Mayor Bill de Blasio has a new standard of admission for New York City high schools that will make your blood boil. Welcome Welcome back. You're watching Fox and Friends First. Emotional high school graduations in the wake of 2 deadly school shootings. Survivors in Parkland, Florida and Santa Fe, Texas, remembering their classmates who never got a chance to collect their diplomas. Fox News correspondent Lauren Green has more.
A moment of silence in memory and in honor of those who lost their lives.
Emotional graduations at 2 high schools where gunfire rang out earlier this year. Santa Fe High School in Texas lost 8 students and 2 teachers in last month's shooting. The victims honored with slideshows and acknowledgments.
Moving on will be tough. Nothing will ever be the same for any of us. We'll make it through to the other side just as we have time and time again.
And in Parkland, Florida, the fatal shooting of 17 students and staff cast a heavy shadow over the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School graduation.
Just remember them. Every day I thank God for them and my memories with them.
Family members of 4 seniors killed accepted the fallen teens' diplomas. A surprise address from Jimmy Fallon did briefly lighten the mood. Both graduations coming as gun control advocates held nationwide rallies this weekend.
No child should be murdered by gun. No parent should have to bury their child.
June is National Gun Violence Awareness Month. Many people wore orange to the demonstrations, the colors hunters wear in the woods to protect themselves. Student survivors of gun violence were among speakers at several rallies, highlighting the fear they face every day simply by going to school.
No students have to go to school fearing for their lives, but we all are those students.
Large demonstrations were held in San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York, among other cities. President Trump met on Thursday with families of some of the Santa Fe shooting victims. In New York, Lauren Green, Fox News.
Thank you, Lauren. Well, tens of thousands of breast cancer patients may be able to skip chemotherapy. There's this new study. It was sponsored by the National Cancer Institute, finding that most women with a common form of early-stage breast cancer can safely avoid the harsh treatment without hurting her chance of beating the disease. So this would be great news. Experts used some genetic testing to determine whether they needed the chemo. Breast cancer is, by the way, the most common form of cancer in women all around the world, and our very own Dr. Nicole Saphier will be on Fox and Friends to talk more about this coming up, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, your DNA could be up for sale. According to a new McClatchy investigation, companies like Ancestry and 23andMe, they're letting customers decide if they want their DNA results saved, which could be sold to research labs. Experts say opting in could put your personal information at risk, though, of being stolen or exploited. This feature gives companies the rights to sell and use the information or legally release it to law enforcement investigations. Well, the time now is about 15 minutes till the top of the hour, and the economy is surging, but that's not enough for Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. So as we mark President Trump's 500th day in office, been 500 days, what is it going to take to get the left on board? Our political panel on deck to debate it up next.
Now, class, please pay attention.
An apple a day might not keep the doctor away. 6th digital detox Apple is now offering to help cure cell phone addiction. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. Apple hoping to fix a problem they created, cell phone addiction.
Now, class, please pay attention.
Good luck. Well, the tech company is expected to announce a new digital health feature today. Apparently, it could let users track their screen time, basically, and it would set time limits on certain apps and remind users when it is time to take a break. But you just have to listen to what it tells you to do, though. So who's going to do that? Well, the mayor of New York wants to scrap admissions tests to make elite high schools more diverse. Instead, Democrat Bill de Blasio wants to reserve 20% of the seats to low-income students with scores below the cutoff. He calls the current test, quote, a roadblock to justice, progress, and academic excellence. De Blasio wants the elite schools to better reflect New York City public schools, which are 70% black and Latino. So let us know what you think about that idea. And if you can believe it, today marks President Trump's 500th day in office. And as the president pushes forward on his agenda, Democrats continue to oppose him pretty much around every corner. So after over a year of success in the White House, why won't Democrats get on board? Here now to debate that is radio talk show host Dr. Gina Loudon and Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me. Love it when you can join us. So let's, right off the bat, look at some of his successes. President Trump's accomplishments so far in the first 500 days. The economy, we just got these new numbers. It's at 3.8% unemployment. It is, what, an 18-year low. Historic tax cuts, ramped up fight against ISIS, a release of prisoners, and the summit with Kim Jong-un is coming up, and then moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, a promise that he made during the campaign. He kept that. And then also the appointment of Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch. I can add to this list a 5.9% black unemployment rate, which is an all-time low. So, Dr. Loudon, I'll begin with you. I mean, these are all great things that are happening. 223,000 jobs added in May.
I am so proud of this president. It leaves pundits like me who just want to be able to criticize and to compliment our president in a real position, because I literally have a difficult time thinking of anything this president hasn't done well and exceptionally. And in fact, I wake up every day and I'm surprised yet again at something amazing he's done. I just returned from Israel, and I can tell you, literally everyone comes up to me and says, can you please thank your American president for everything he's done for world peace, for Israel, and frankly for America, because they see America as such a beacon of hope in the world.
So, Chuck, I want to bring this up. This is what Nancy Pelosi had to say about the job numbers that we just mentioned. Listen. Well, actually, it was a statement. She said May's jobs report shows that strong employment numbers mean little to the families hit with soaring new costs under the Republicans' watch. So we have 223,000 jobs added in May. We just mentioned we have this, unemployment rate that's the lowest in 18 years. And then the black unemployment rate as well, an all-time low. So why does she have to spin it? Why can't she just say, you know what, this is pretty good?
Well, because she's trying to be honest, and I think what you've seen is from the Democrats and Republicans, just like the job number, for example, there's a lot of great jobs being created, but most of them are minimum wage jobs, and you're going to need 2 of them to make up for the job that you just lost when they shipped your job to Mexico. And on the announcement of how do we get with Donald Trump and how do we support him more, I would remind you that when Barack Obama came into office, the nation was hemorrhaging 500,000 jobs a month, and he turned that around to a surplus of 225. But Mitch McConnell, as soon as he got sworn in, said his #1 job was to make sure he was the one-term president, whether he agreed with him or not. And I think the Democrats are returning favor, whether we like it or not.
And do you think that there's anything that will get Democrats to say, you know what, he's doing a good job? What would that take?
I do think that there's a possibility, because look at the Senate. In the Senate, there are like 30 senators up. 10 of those are in marginal seats, and of those 10, Donald Trump won 9 of those seats. So they're going to be looking for compromise positions because they're up for re-election this year, and the majority of their people in their state supported Donald Trump.
All right, Dr. Loudon, you have the last word here.
Well, Trump derangement syndrome runs deep, sadly, and the Democrats would really be smart to do exactly what you said and start joining him at least on the things they can agree with him on if they want to win any elections coming up in the midterms.
It will be very interesting to see how the midterms play out in terms of support of President Trump or not supporting President Trump. That will say a lot as to where Americans are. Thank you both for joining us.
Sure will.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Good morning.
You too.
Well, the time now is about 10 minutes or so, a little less, to the top of the hour. And it is a dance-off that's got everyone talking, the unlikely duo taking over the internet. And a bogus British accent, the American man who fooled millions for years, how he was finally royally called out. Well, the top boss at Starbucks sparking outrage by blaming President Trump for helping to spread racial rhetoric.
I would say on a personal level, it probably has given license to people to feel as if they can emulate and copy the kind of behavior and language that comes out of this administration.
Well, this despite the coffee chain forced to close its doors nationwide for anti-bias training after the controversial arrest of 2 black men in Philadelphia, in a Philadelphia store there. Your comments pouring in on this one. Jeff on Facebook writes, Starbucks execs coffee must be strong. Go back 10 years. If you want to see divisiveness, start there. And then Judy posts, what racial divide? It's a fake made-up lie spread by liberals. And then Ron writes, the executive chairman of Starbucks needs to get a chill-out latte. President Trump is the most open president ever. Time now for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Up first, the good. And take a look at this. This little boy's dancing fever catching on with one TSA agent you can see there in the background. 7-year-old Preston busting a move. This was at Orlando International Airport when the agent gets in on the fun. Good dancer. And then up next, the bad. If you recently bought a concert ticket, listen up. Ticket company Ticketfly admitting that a huge data breach happened. It hit 26 million customers. The hack leaking personal information, including names, addresses, and phone numbers. So be aware of that.